Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Winning Mindset Formula. I'm Jonathan Russian, and I'm here with Tom Tabor. Tom, how you feeling?
I'm good. Do you
Yeah.
want me to paint the scene again?
Please don't paint the scene, bro. The scene has been painted. The scene has been painted.
All right.
So
So
yeah,
this
we're beating a dead horse because um a day ago a report came out on CBS News, and apparently Colin Kaepernick released a statement where he said 5, 6 days a week, I'm still up, 4:30 AM. I go get my training in. Yeah, that passion is still there, and that ability is still there. So I feel like this is a great time to bring this, back into the forefront just because recently we discussed in one of our latest episodes how, the mobile quarterback is kinda here. This
this is the
wave,
era. This
this
is
is
the
the
era.
era of mobile quarterbacks, and all the new faces of the quarterback position in the league are these, taller, strong, athletic, mobile quarterbacks, for their position, and they're leading their teams to playoff contention every season. So, this report is interesting because it brings, the question to your mind of like, hey, out of these quarterbacks, that kinda have that were, competing and contending before this new wave came in and kinda cemented
Mhm.
themselves, like, think of, like, Russell Wilson, Colin Kaepernick,
Let's talk about that
Cam
year.
Newton.
Let's that's a good example. But
So
Jonathan,
ho
let's
hold on,
let's
let
flash
me finish
back.
this. Let me finish this. So thinking about that, are we kinda leaving Colin Kaepernick out and, maybe he could still be thriving in the NFL? So I think it's a good debate and conversation, to revisit. Does Colin Kaepernick belong on an NFL roster?
I think he absolutely has the ability to be on an NFL roster. Now, I mean, Jonathan, there's going to be a little bit of rust there. He hasn't started in the game. Actually, he hasn't played in the game since 2016. I mean, we're looking at 7 years ago now. So there's going to be a lot of rust to get up, but I think he can definitely be on a roster. He let's get maybe a preseason under his belt. He has the ability to, certainly play in these other leagues. He can play in the XFL, he can play in the USFL. No bias at all. I do believe Kaepernick, belongs on NFL roster. I mean, obviously me as a 49er fan, I'm grateful for, that 2012 season, that 2013 season. You know, Kaepernick brought a dynamic to that offense in 2012 that, think about it, as a kid growing up, I had never seen. Because so the Niners make it to the playoffs in 2002. I'm 7 years old, barely remember that season. I go almost a decade, watching, just mediocre offenses, watching the quarterback carousel just constantly going through San Francisco. They don't have their guy. And then I'm seeing this offense explode during the second half of the 2012 season. And teams just do not have an answer for Kaepernick. And then the game that stands out the most to me was that 2012 divisional round against the Packers. Now, it wasn't a pretty start. I don't know if you remember this, but Colin Kaepernick started the game by throwing a pick six. And I believe
Mm.
was it Sam Shields, I think. Yeah, Sam Shields had the pick six for Green Bay. And then Joe Buck and Troy Aikman immediately said, like, oh, would Alex Smith have done that? Are
Mm.
they starting to panic? Do they think they need to throw Alex Smith in there? Meanwhile, Kaepernick has one of the best performances for a quarterback in postseason history. I believe his rushing record for that game might stand. I have to double check that, but I know at the time he set an NFL postseason record for rushing yards by a quarterback in a single postseason game.
And to kinda carry off of that, it just makes me think of, like, all the other quarterbacks that get these shots. Like, what comes to mind is someone like Baker Mayfield.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, how does Baker Mayfield keep getting these opportunities with him, kinda he has question marks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, Baker Mayfield has question marks, you know, both personality-wise, locker room-wise, and, skill-wise. I think he can make a lot of the throws that he needs to make in the NFL, but I don't think he has the size, to kinda, like, play the quarterback position, and I think that's where he kinda gets messed up. I don't know, like, I if his vision is impacted, his presence in the pocket is impacted, or what it is, but it's just like, how do those type of guys stick around and get
Mhm.
these opportunities? But someone like Colin Kaepernick, who at least has taken a team to the Super Bowl and has had big moments, beat
And the NFC Championship a year later.
right, and, has had big games, how does he not get an opportunity? And yeah, like, there was all the off the field stuff and social justice stuff, but, I mean, that's kinda past now, right? So
Mhm.
it just kinda the question is like, hey, you see all these other mobile quarterbacks that fit that mold. It's almost like it's kinda like Colin Kaepernick was that original quarterback in a way, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? To come in and to take because he took Alex Smith's starting spot, correct?
and Alex Smith was having the best year of his entire career at that point. Alex Smith was about to set the single season record for completion percentage at 70%.
Exactly. So it's not like he came into a franchise that was rebuilding and there was no clear-cut guy on the depth chart as far as QB, right?
Jonathan, they
He
had their quarterback. Alex Smith took them to the NFC Championship the year before that, and then Alex Smith started 6 and 2. He was the guy. Alex
Exactly.
Smith was going to get them to the Super Bowl that year, but bam, in comes Colin Kaepernick, and the offense just looks completely different. It looks more explosive. It looks more volatile. I mean, one game that stands out to me is what they did to the Patriots that year. The Patriots were the defending AFC champions, and, they were still looking at like it was looking like they were still gonna repeat the AFC. And the Niners went to Gillette Stadium on Sunday Night Football in snowy conditions. It was like a sleet rain mix. And, people are like, we're gonna see an offense today. It's like, yeah, you're gonna see an offense. It's Tom Brady. No. We're gonna see Colin Kaepernick lead an explosive 49er offense, and they're going to put up over 40 points against the Patriots, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And against a Super Bowl winning quarterback, you know what I mean? So, I don't know, I think it's a question that we need to revisit, and, I think a lot of time has passed, and you see, like, Geno Smith kinda bursting onto the scene and having a Pro Bowl year
But I will
after
say
being
this
Go
with
ahead.
Geno, he's had no time off.
Mm,
He's ever since he came into the league in 2013, right? He's been on a roster every single year. Like, yeah, he hasn't started, he hasn't played in every single game, but he's still getting reps every single week. He's getting team reps every single week
mm,
in practice. He's getting reps in the preseason. He did start, I think he started one game with the Giants. He got some relief time. He got some relief time for Russell Wilson last year, or sorry, 2 years ago now. So that's the thing. I think that's the thing that's hurting Kaepernick right now is the fact that he's actually been out of the league, so he hasn't been getting any reps since 2016. So
right.
I think so I think basically because the off the field stuff, it's like, yeah, I'd say the years 2017 to 2019, like, yeah, because the off the field stuff and just I guess where we were at that time, like the mindset of the NFL, like, yeah, there's no shot in hell any, owner is going to want Colin Kaepernick on their team. But now we get post 2020, it's like, it's I don't think anyone has an issue having someone like Kaepernick on their team. It's just the only concern is, dude, this guy's been out of football for 7 years. I think that's the reason Kaepernick's not on an NFL roster right now. It's because, hey, he's been out of the league too long. There's no way.
Hmm. So maybe if he does, join the XFL, which is interesting why, like, he's making media statements, but, like, yo, bro, the XFL just started. You
that's
know
a
what I mean?
perfect opportunity.
Yeah, like you could probably be in that league, and then if you go there and you erupt and you know, start playing, you know, football at a certain level, maybe that opportunity, you know, would present itself.
So a lot of people in life, I mean, you gotta realize sometimes in order to take a step forward, sometimes you might have to take a few steps back in order to take a step forward. And I I think that's what Kaepernick has to do here. So
Mhm.
yeah, take a shot at the XFL, take a shot at the USFL, show everyone you can still play. Use that path, to create a path to get back to the NFL.
Absolutely. That's a great point. That's a great point. You know, because your path is not always linear. You know what I mean? It's not always like trending in the same general direction that you always envisioned it. So yeah, I 100% agree, but it's just like we never kind of got that closure of because me personally, when I hear people say, you know, the main criticism I hear is that people say, you know, well, Colin Kaepernick only had one good year, and you know they try to like downplay him because they don't like you know what he did with the media and they don't agree with his views, and so they try and discredit what he did on the field, which is what I disagree with. I don't care if you had one good season.
Mhm.
If you went to the Super Bowl
Then the NFC Championship the next year.
the next year, you can play football.
Absolutely.
And if you're in the NFL, you can play football. You know that.
No,
So,
absolutely. No, Kaepernick's a great player. Like anyone who is in the NFL is a great football player. Like, hey, you've made it to the NFL. I mean, Jonathan, I did my pro day. Shit, I didn't even get a shot. Like, you are a great football player to even be on an NFL roster. There's
mhm,
no doubt about it. So it always drives me crazy, like when like maybe you're watching the game with some friends, and then you hear them say like, "Oh, this guy sucks." It always grinds my gears a little bit. I'm like, but he doesn't. Like he
yeah,
really doesn't. Like
exactly.
he's in the NFL.
It's tough because that's like a part of fandom.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like so you kinda understand, like, some fans just like the heckling aspect of the game.
Yeah.
You know
Exactly.
what I mean? And they're just like, "Well, this guy's getting paid millions to play a game. Why isn't he good?" You know? And sometimes players don't pass the eye test. You know what I mean? Sometimes players are, you know, a little inconsistent and maybe not, you know, playing at the level they're portrayed to be.
Mhm.
But how a player is portrayed versus how they actually are two different things. And another point I want to bring up is like Kaepernick never got a shot outside of the 49ers.
Well, I think I'll have to double check this. When in 2017, when he was looking to sign elsewhere, I think I heard that Denver made an offer, but I think Kaepernick wanted more than what Denver was offering, so he turned that down. We have to double check that.
Okay.
Uh, it's been a long time since, I've
Right.
really heard.
But whether that is true or not, I think to kind of get in front of that objection of like, oh, well, he fell off after that and he didn't play well after a year and a half. To get in front of that objection is like you see people go into different schemes, play for different coaches, play in different teams, and blossom into completely different players, or
Well,
be able to show a skill set that they weren't able to show in the previous role or
mhm.
situation. You know what I mean? So it's
No,
like,
exactly. And then, I mean, as much as I hate to talk about it, I mean, let's talk about it. What happened to the 49ers? So 2013, Colin Kaepernick, his first full season as a starter. This is the year after they go to the Super Bowl, gets them back to the NFC Championship. Very, very tough game. They lose by just a matter of inches. If he gets a couple more inches on that ball to Crabtree's open in the end zone. He beat Sherman on the route.
he
Niners are going to
beat
the Super Bowl.
Sherman.
He I'm
He
s I'm
beat
s
Sherman.
I'm sorry, Sherm. Richard Sherman ended up being a 49er. Love Richard Sherman, but, him saying that, when you come at me with a sorry receiver like Crabtree, that's the result you're gonna get. Well, I mean, Crabtree beat you on the route. Kaepernick, the ball was slightly underthrown. Crabtree had a touchdown all day. But anyways, so after that, the 49ers had a very tough 2014 campaign. Like, they're in the playoff hunt up until the very end of the season, and it was evident before the season was over that they were not gonna retain Jim Harbaugh. It sounded like they were mutually gonna be like, the 49ers and Jim Harbaugh were mutually gonna be parting ways before the season was even over. So, at the end of 2014, it's official. Niners and Jim Harbaugh part ways. Basically, the Niners promoted from within. They promoted defensive line coach Jim Tom Sula to be the head coach in 2015, and then it just spiraled downhill from there. So as soon as this coaching change is made, we're losing all of our key players that took us to the Super Bowl. Patrick Willis retires. Chris Borland retires. He was had a stud rookie season 2014, retired after 1 year. He was going to be the future at the linebacking position for the Niners. We lost Frank Gore after the 2014 season.
That's a big loss right there.
Yep.
'Cause Frank
Salute.
Gore, isn't he 3rd all time in rushing yards or
Third
something?
all time behind Emmitt Smith and Walter Payton. And he
So
was
Frank Gore is a bona fide one of the GOATs at
first
the
ballot
running
Hall of
back position.
Famer,
Yeah, one of the GOATs. But
without a doubt.
it
So
and it's kinda like, when you reach that peak and things don't work out, some teams you see, like, they fall apart. They kinda lose a part of themselves through that experience. You saw it with the Atlanta Falcons when they when they fumbled the biggest lead in Super Bowl history
mhm,
to the Patriots. After that, that was a young team. Tom, that was a young team. There was
it
no reason why they shouldn't have been able to run that back.
they
But
resembled the 2012 and 2013 49ers. So 2012 Niners go to the Super Bowl, lose a heartbreaker. 2013 drop the NFC Championship, and then immediately become irrelevant. People forget that after the Falcons lost Super Bowl 51, they were still one of the best teams in the NFL the following season in 2017. They easily made it back to the playoffs, and
that's when they lost
they
to the Eagles, right?
they lost in the Eagles to the divisional round because of a spectacular goal line stand Philly had. I thought there was no chance Philly was gonna stop them because you have all these weapons on that loaded Atlanta offense, and I'm thinking, "Dude, the Falcons are gonna win this game. They're gonna roll by the Vikings in the NFC Championship. We're gonna have a Falcons-Patriots rematch here in Super Bowl 52." Falcons lose to Philly. They fall off. They have not been to the postseason since. They got a little bit of a quarterback carousel going on right now. They ended up losing, Dan Quinn, bringing in Arthur Smith as their new head coach. They just still have not been able to really get it together since then. But the
Right.
49ers with Kaepernick, they followed the same path.
Mhm.
2014, they finish 8-8. They lose Jim Harbaugh. Then go to 2015. Kaepernick gets benched at some point during the 2015 season for Blaine Gabbert. Niners finish 5-11. Jim Tom Sula is fired after one season. Then they bring on Chip Kelly in 2016. Blaine Gabbert's the day one starter. It's not even Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick doesn't start till later in the season. Niners finish 2-14, worst record in the NFL in 2016. And then 2017, after 1 year, Chip Kelly gets fired. In comes Kyle Shanahan.
So it really kinda paints the picture of, I just feel like we're missing that second part of Kaepernick's career
Mhm.
where we could have actually got the answer of, who is Colin Kaepernick as a player? You know what I mean? Because he bursted onto the scene. He was this polarizing player. He had the off the field issues that didn't sit well with people. And, it kinda brings up the concept of sacrifice. You know what I mean? Because love him or hate him, he was willing to sacrifice the game he loved
For what he
whatever
believed
mesh
in.
for what he believed in, right?
Mhm.
So I would just really like to see the NFL give him another chance. I would like to see him have a chance to play football, you know what I mean? And maybe, like, because I think what happens, especially in sports, I don't know, it just seemed to me like the NFL community was just like, "We don't want that shit here." That's how it
They
seemed to me.
shut that down real
They
fast.
were like, "We don't want that shit here, dude. We play football here. We don't talk about that kinda shit. Like, this is the NFL."
Meanwhile,
But it's
Deshaun Watson's welcome back with open arms.
that's a whole whole 'nother one right there. But, yeah, it's like, give the young man another chance, right? And maybe don't I just think that's one thing that I see with people is, like, they don't stop and think about things sometimes. They're so quick to just, like, scold and cast people away in a sorts. And it's like, sports and it brings up the issue of, like, is sports a place where social issues should be relevant? And this is where I say yes, because if you look at the great Muhammad Ali as a good example, he was very vocal about social issues,
He
and
was.
in his day, he was one of the biggest athletes in America.
He was.
He was one of the most polarizing figures in America.
And correct me if
So,
I'm wrong, but I think he was very outspoken about the Vietnam War, correct?
yeah. Mhm. 'Cause I don't know the details, but I think he refuse to go and they put him in
He got
jail?
drafted, right?
Something like that. But he refused to go, and I think they tried to put him in jail. They stripped him of his title, I know that, but it's just
Well, and
like
I
these.
know I don't think I ever listened to the actual speech, but there is a song, a Public Enemy song called "Fight the Power," and in the beginning of the song, I'm pretty sure it's a quote from Muhammad Ali talking about, like, the best fighters refusing to fight or something like
Mm,
that.
mm,
Um, but yeah,
which
that's
is
how the
which is
song starts.
which is crazy, because if your greatest warrior is saying it's not always about the battle, that's a powerful message, right?
Mm,
But yeah, I mean, I think our athletes should follow the path that other athletes have followed in, the history of the United States and be able to stand up for what's important to them, we can't have that show, the show must go on mentality at all times. Like, yeah, sometimes we just wanna sit down and watch football, we love the NFL, don't
yep.
mess with it.
We don't
I
want
get
the
it.
drama. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Don't mess with our football, we like it, period. But also it's about, these people are humans too, right? Like, it's not like being a citizen and being a professional athlete are mutually exclusive, you know what I mean? Like, they coexist, and these people have points that they wanna raise, and they have passions, and they see things that we don't see. That's another thing, is like, how do you know Colin Kaepernick didn't see things that we didn't see and he didn't say in the media? You know what I mean? Like, you can't just say like, "Ah, he's an athlete, what does he have to complain about?" Like, you don't know the full story.
Well, did you there is a Netflix original series. It's the it's a I think it's just 1 season, but it's basically Colin Kaepernick's story, like, growing up. So he
Did
was
you did
raised.
you watch that?
Yeah, I watched it. But yeah, no, they were like it just seemed like in the series, he had to growing up, he had to hide who he was. Like, I guess that's the best way to describe it. And then, there was, like, one incident. Now I don't know if this is what, like, actually happened or if it was, like, if they just added more effects for the drama to build the drama, but Kaepernick was driving with his pa he was adopted, right?
Yeah, I know he's adopted.
So he's driving with his parents to a baseball tournament because he was doing, like, baseball tournaments every weekend, and so he's driving, he has his learner's permit, and the cop is, like, kinda taking it too far, and, he's the cop's, like, very jumpy, he's getting pretty nervous, and then he's freaking Kaepernick out. Kaepernick's like, "What the heck is going on?" Then basically his dad in the passenger seat saves the day,
Gotcha.
but No, so yeah, I mean, it kinda made things it's like, okay, I can see why, you know, many years later, Kaepernick, would, be passionate about, issues like that.
Right. Absolutely. And maybe he doesn't just see himself as only an athlete, right?
Mhm,
Like just because he's, gifted enough to play in the NFL doesn't mean that's his whole life story,
mhm,
right? Like maybe it's more important to him to, speak his mind. Everyone expresses themselves differently and has different things that fulfill them,
mhm.
which some people I think people just forget about that kind of thing. But to kind of circle back, yeah, I think Colin Kaepernick should definitely get another shot, whether it's in the XFL, the USFL,
So
or the NFL.
I think the XFL and USFL would welcome him with open arms. I mean, I think any coaching staff in those leagues would be like, "Hell yeah, Colin Kaepernick, like, we're gonna take this team to the moon." It's just I think it just needs to come down to Kaepernick accepting the fact, like, "Hey, the NFL is not for me right now." Like, these guys in the XFL or the USFL, they might give me a chance. It's an opportunity to play football. I mean, look, there are people that are taking a step back to go to the XFL to, you know, reopen that opportunity in the NFL. Like, think of again, we talked about AJ McCarron last week. AJ McCarron turning down millions because, he wants to make memories for his kids. He wants his kids to be able to see him actually play the game of football. So he's taken a step back, and who knows? I mean, he's been lighting up the XFL so far. Maybe teams see that and they're like, you know what, AJ McCarron is probably a guy that can start for us. Or, if you're in like a team that's in a rebuild mode, you're like, hey, we can draft a quarterback right now. We could have a guy like AJ McCarron, start a few games and mentor this kid, before we put this kid in maybe a tough situation. Cause, when you're in a rebuild mode, it's very hard as a rookie quarterback to go in for basically a rebuild situation. You're thrown into the fire, you're fed to the wolves right away.
Yep. I grew up seeing that happen.
As a Browns fan, yeah, absolutely.
As a Browns fan.
Mhm,
So, yeah, I 100% agree, and, in life, you have to go where you're wanted,
mhm.
you can't stay at a table where you're not being fed. So,
To be
hopefully
fair, Jonathan, I saw it too, don't worry. Don't forget about Alex Smith, man. First overall pick, 2005 NFL draft. Those first 6 years were tough. You gotta feel for him, man. Those first 6 years were brutal.
yeah. But, yeah, I mean, yeah, you gotta go where you're fed, where you're given the opportunity, where you're accepted and wanted, and that's something that applies to all of us, and I think, the Kaepernick story is like what we talked about in the first couple episodes of our podcast about how, sometimes how you envision it happening isn't how it's meant to happen.
Mhm,
And I think that's a skill that people have, but when it seems like when the situation goes sour, you know, it's kind of hard to have that positive mentality, right? Because
mhm.
if you're employed by someone and, you know, it goes sour, you kind of get a little bitter, right? You kind of get a little jaded
Yep.
and you kind of like you don't it clouds your judgment in a way. And I think that's when it just becomes like too much and it becomes too excessive. Because, like you said, Colin Kaepernick has the talent. If you're in the NFL, if you're able to take a team to the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship, you can play football. It should never get to the point where people are saying, "Oh, that guy sucked." It's like
Mhm.
you can't love him one day and then hate him the next day, right? That's kind of immature.
What if I throw a little curveball here?
Go ahead.
I can talk to you about some other quarterbacks that have, led their teams to Super Bowls. Trent Dilfer was one that he led the, Ravens to the Super Bowl in 2000. Let's not forget Jeff Hostetler led the Giants to the Super Bowl in 1990.
Is that
So, I
it?
mean
Yeah.
oh, no, no,
I was expecting one of those lists. that you had stored in that brain of like
I
30 pl
mean, Chris Chandler. Chris Chandler took the Falcons to the Super Bowl in '98.
I don't know any of these guys.
Well, I thought for sure you'd know Trent Dilfer.
Oh, okay, I know Trent Dilfer, the bald guy,
Yep.
but I know him from, like, broadcasting,
Yes.
not
Yes,
playing.
correct. Correct. So, I mean, I don't wanna put those guys down at all. I mean, dude, they were in the NFL. They were great football players. But compared to the other players who have played at that level, maybe not Matt, like, I'm thinking of other quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls. Like, you can't really put Trent Dilfer and Jeff Hostetler in the same category as, like, a Joe Montana, a
No,
Peyton Manning, a Tom Brady, a Ben Roethlisberger, a Bart Starr.
correct.
Uh,
But, to be fair, think about Ben Roethlisberger. He went to the Super Bowl his 2nd season, right?
yep, went to the AFC
And and
Championship his
and
first year.
he wasn't now in his 2nd season, he wasn't polished enough
So it's funny you mentioned that.
to be a quarterback that is leading and winning the Super Bowl for his team, right? That was a lot about just that Steelers team and that Steelers defense.
So before that Super Bowl, Trent Dilfer had the worst passer rating of a winning quarterback in the Super Bowl until Ben Roethlisberger had the worst QB percentage of a quarterback in the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 40.
Right. So that kinda proves my point of, like, yeah, they're not all, just because you lead your team to the Super Bowl doesn't mean you're in that same automatically in that class, but
Like, how much of an impact did you have on your team's success?
right. And then it kinda goes untold because we didn't get to see how it worked out. With Kaepernick specifically, we didn't get to see how it worked out. He didn't go to another situation with another coach that believed in him,
Mhm.
right? Or he didn't go to another organization that wanted to recapture the the firepower that 49ers team had that you talked about, right?
Well, I think
He didn't get that chance.
something that could have hurt him too is just the fact that Jim Harbaugh is out of the NFL. After 2014, he ends up signing a contract with Michigan. So he goes down to college football. He goes back to college football. And that's where he's been ever since,
And then at that point, there's no other coach willing to take a chance on Kaepernick.
which is kind of surprising because, a guy like Greg Roman is still in the NFL. Greg Roman was his offensive coordinator for the 49ers. He's a longtime offensive coordinator for Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. The Ravens just let him go this year.
Mhm. So let's bring mindset into this like we always do. What do we take away from the Colin Kaepernick situation? Because it still seems like, every couple of years we start hearing about him again.
There's always a buzz every year. It's like, oh, hey, Nick has a workout and X amount of teams are going to be there. We hear that every single year, and then there's nothing. There's no results out of it. There's nothing. We
Right.
just hear like, oh, it was a good workout.
So I mean, I and then you have people that say, "Oh, he doesn't even really wanna play because he took a settlement from the NFL and he's just doing that just to do it." But it's like, I mean, he clearly has a passion for it. Because what
Mhm.
else is he doing? Why else would he be training? Why else would he be, still keeping his dream alive? So, I think it's a good example, and I'd like to see him get a shot because if he could get a shot and have some success, I think it'd be a great story, and I think it'd be a great learning lesson for America, honestly.
Absolutely.
You know, a lesson
Well,
of sacrifice, forgiveness, and then because it doesn't always go well, but sometimes, like, you just have to look back and be like, "Yo, yeah, both parties did things wrong, and it's okay now."
mm,
Time went on. Let's play football. You wanna
I think
play? We'll
it's
give you an opportunity.
not only is it an opportunity for Kaepernick to redeem himself, it's an opportunity for the NFL to redeem itself too.
Right. Absolutely.
Do I need to paint the picture again?
The picture has been painted.
I
We
feel like
painted
I
the
feel
picture.
like to I feel like to recap this episode because I was doing such a marvelous job of painting the picture.
If
Monday
you'd
night.
like to.
All right, 2012. The 49ers start the year 6-2. Niners are playing the Rams. Alex Smith having the best season in his career. 70% completion percentage. Bam, goes down with a concussion in an instant. In comes Colin Kaepernick. 49ers finish the game in a tie. Next week, Smith is still out with a concussion. Insert,
This is such a long-winded version.
insert Colin Kaepernick. First career start Monday Night Football against, at this point in time in the season, the best team in the NFC, the Chicago Bears. But people forget Jay Cutler actually was hurt that game. Jason Campbell got the start, which is probably why it went south. But anyways,
Let's be on
Niners
point.
Niners obliterate the Bears in Kaepernick's first start. All of a sudden, I mean, the offense is looking different, completely different. It looks more explosive. Kaepernick's able to stretch the field. And Jim Harbaugh, before this happened, Jim Harbaugh was like, a guy will never lose his starting job due to injury. Now Jim Harbaugh is like, well, shit, I mean, you got to go with the guy that has the hot hand, and it's clearly Cap. Next week, Niners win again. Another impressive performance by Kaepernick against the Saints. Okay, that done deal. Kaepernick's the starting quarterback. Fast forward a few months later, Kaepernick has one of the best
And then the
performances.
lights went out.
Okay, we're
And
not
then
gonna
the
s-
light
we're not gonna talk about that
That's
game.
all you need to know.
We're not gonna talk about that
And
game.
then the lights went out. Ray Lewis
Yeah, the light, the
got his
lights,
last
the
chip.
lights went out on my hopes and dreams.
But yeah, man, it'd be a great story of redemption. Redemption is a major theme in life. We talk about mindset. What's better than redemption? Because, you can't get it right the first
Besides guys
time.
being dudes,
Right. You can't get it right the first time. Always. You
hmm
can't always get it right. But someone has to be the bigger person.
so
And
who's it gonna be though, Jonathan? Who's it gonna be? Is it gonna be Kaepernick or is it gonna be the NFL? Is Kaepernick gonna say, "Hey, I need to take a step back. I need to go to the X. I need to try the XFL. I need to try the USFL." Or is there gonna be one specific franchise that's gonna be like, "You know what the hell? I'll just give him a shot."
I don't think it's going to be the NFL.
It has to be
Um,
Kaepernick.
I think it has to be Kaepernick, and I think he has to kinda adapt his strategy, right? You can't just make these claims and stuff let's show it. Get on a field, right? Get on a field
Dude,
and
I don't care
let's
if it's
let
arena. I don't care if it's arena football.
right.
Get out
Get
there.
get out there and show us what you got because like we
Dude, Kurt
said,
Kurt Warner came from the arena league.
in the eye in the sky don't lie,
It
right?
doesn't, man.
The eye in the sky
Put
don't
it
lie. If
on
he
tape. Put
Like
it on tape.
Dan Campbell just said the other day, he had a quote about tape. You judge a
Mhm.
guy by the tape. Boom. If Colin
Yeah, it's
Kaepernick
like
goes to the NFL or the XFL, leads the Brahmas to the XFL championship, then he can start going to CBS News and saying, "Hey, I want my shot. Reach out to my agent. He's
exactly.
he's available. Let's make it happen." And he also another big part of it too is he has to be reasonable with, hey, does he join a team and what what would his role look like if he joined a team? Could he be a veteran leader, right? Because if he thinks he's gonna join a team and then get the keys again, that ain't gonna happen.
It's not gonna happen. No one's
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah,
no
that's
one's
not
gonna
gonna
take
happen.
that chance.
And with the media storm that was around that, you
It's
know,
gonna be a bigger media storm to whoever
and
gives him
the
a chance.
the scrutiny is gonna be on him. Like it's gonna be expected for him to keep his head down if he does join the NFL because
Yep,
there's gonna be people that wanna see him fail still just because he did what he
because they're
did and
still bitter. They're still bitter
right.
about the whole thing.
He took the stand that he did and he was honest. So there's still gonna be people that wanna see him fail, just like there's gonna be people that wanna see Deshaun Watson fail for the rest of his career, no matter what. So I think he needs to fix his perspective and just show that he really wants to play football and show what he can, and then maybe we'll get to see the end of that story. I think it's a great story. I think it's one of the bigger things that we didn't get to see because maybe Colin Kaepernick ends up winning a Super Bowl somewhere. Who knows? You know? And then what?
Well, hey, I
Then it's
mean,
a completely different story.
with the way the Niners go through quarterbacks, maybe he's somehow picked up. Gets to come back with the only team he has ever played for and lead them to a Super Bowl title.
Why don't the Ravens just trade Lamar Jackson and sign Colin Kaepernick?
Well, have you heard those rumors? It's always something crazy every day, but now, like, one of the main rumors this NFL offseason is that the Niners are going all in to trade for Lamar Jackson.
Oh, really?
It's like, no, they're not.
When did this happen?
This has been going on for like the last 2 weeks.
I would love to see that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, would I love to have Lamar Jackson as my quarterback? Absolutely. But it's like, dude, like, what kind of a price would we have to pay for that? And second of all, like, feel like it's a position we don't even like. We have two starting quarterbacks right
Do
now.
you though?
I would say so.
Because you know I'm a bit of a Brock Purdy skeptic. Speaking of
So,
having one good season, I
okay,
mean,
actually, this is a good comparison. All right, so let's look at Colin Kaepernick 2012 and Brock Purdy 2022.
is this a comparison? Because I don't think you guys made it to the Super Bowl.
All right, well, there is a slight issue. Was the story was incomplete because Brock didn't even get to play in the NFC Championship.
The whole NFC Championship.
He played one. Jonathan. He played. So he was
I'm being a troll. I'm sorry.
he was healthy
I'm
for
being a troll.
5 plays. He was healthy for 5 plays.
And in those 5 plays, did he take control
He
of the game?
Yeah, actually they were dude, to watch that drive again, they were moving the ball. But okay, so was Brock
Tom is a little biased with Brock Purdy. It's okay.
was Brock Purdy a product of the players he had around him? Was Colin Kaepernick a product of the players he had around him? All right. So 2012, Niners have one of the best defenses in the league. 2022, Niners actually have the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL.
Mm.
Now, as much as I love that 2012 defense, and it kind of kills me to say this, the 2022 49er defense was without a doubt better than the 2012 defense. Just statistically, all around the board, much better defense in 2022 than 2012 or 2012. All right, now let's look at the weapons on offense. So 2012, guess who the Niners' number 1 receiver was?
Was it Crabtree?
It was Crabtree.
Okay.
You probably have no idea who the other receivers were after
I'm trying
Crabtree.
that's what I was trying to think. I'm like, who even was on that receiving core?
So they had Mario Manningham.
Oh, wow.
Yep. They
Post Giants,
post
Mario
Giants.
Manningham. Yeah.
This was when he was like one of the top receivers on the market. Niners ended up scooping him up, thinking he was the final piece of the puzzle. So you had Michael Crabtree, Mario Manningham. They had Ted Ginn.
Ted Ginn is
It's
kind of a piece though.
kind of a
Deep
piece.
he's a deep threat and returner.
Yep.
Ted Ginn's no slouch.
Then the other guys they had were Chad Hall, an undrafted guy at Air Force. They also had AJ Jenkins, who ended up being one of the biggest draft busts, unfortunately, in NFL history. And yeah, I think I went through all of them.
Vernon Davis,
He was their tight end. They had Vernon Davis and Delaney Walker. Don't forget that.
Delaney Walker.
That was
That's
a
a
pretty good combo.
solid tight end core.
The
And then
O-line in 2012, that was probably the best O-line the 49ers have ever had. So I will say Colin Kaepernick had a fantastic offensive line. He had a better offensive line than Brock Purdy did. Now, that is not to discredit the 49ers offensive line today. Like it is, I thought they did a really good job this year. I thought they performed well during they lost a lot of key guys going into this season. Like, we had the three unknowns in the interior that I thought did really well in Jake Brendel, Aaron Banks, and Spencer Burford. But that being said, honestly, that's the 2012 O line. I mean, that's elite right there. And then you have an elite running game with Frank Gore. Like, so I think Kaepernick was spoiled with that elite running game. With Purdy, it's like, yeah, you have a solid running game, but you don't have the offensive line. I think that can really bully people like that 2012 offensive line was able to do. So, so what
So
do we?
what's your verdict? I mean, is
I
Brock
s- I still think Brock Purdy is more of a product than Colin Kaepernick of the success of the players around. Because
I would agree.
I think what separates them is
Mobility.
so Kaepernick has the offensive line, but I'm thinking of the skill guys around him because Purdy has Christian McCaffrey, he has Debo, he has Ayuk, he has George Kittle, he has Kyle Juszczyk. All those guys, Pro Bowlers, right?
Mhm.
Colin Kaepernick has Michael Crabtree, Vernon Davis, and Frank Gore. That's
Right.
basically it. That is your whole offense.
And
And that
Michael Crabtree was never really, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was never a, I mean, was he ever a true number 1
in
wide
2012
receiver?
in 2012, he was. That was the best year of his career, I
But
believe.
it was only for 1 year where you could really say he was an elite number 1 all pro level
Yeah,
wide receiver.
because in 2013, that was the year they signed Anquan Bolden, and that was one of the best signings the 49ers have ever nailed in free agency. Bolden was a beast.
Mhm.
That's why I thought the 2013 team was slightly better than the 2012 team because of that element of Anquan Bolden.
Anquan Boldin was very solid. He
Mhm.
reminds me a lot of Hines Ward. Very
Oh, yeah.
tough, could make physical catches, reliable catches.
Same time
Um,
frame, man. Same time frame.
but yeah,
Well, man, we're at that
we're at
48-minute
50
marker.
minutes.
Yeah.
Wrapping up. Thank you, world. Tom,
Thank you, Jonathan.
and we'll see you next time.
Always.